Anania, Sapphira, and Adam, Hawa's choice was freedom, allowed by God. What is a person rather than an angel without freedom? So is there freedom to choose sin and death. Anania and Sapphi are the characters in Acts 51-11 of the New Testament. The story is an incident in the first church, where Anania and his wife Sapphira sold their ownership, hiding some of them and dedicating the rest to the apostles, as if they were everything. Anania and Sapphi, like others, tried to sell their property and donate it to the church, but in the process, they hid some of it and lied. Peter pointed out their lies and said that they were not lies to people, but lies to God. Eventually, Anania and Sapphi each die immediately. This event highlights the importance of honesty and devotion in the early church, illustrating how serious the consequences of lying before God can be. The ending of Anania and Sapphira is very tragic. According to Acts of the Apostles, Anania died immediately after first lying before Peter. After that, his wife Sapphi lied the same thing without knowing her husband's death, and she also died immediately. This event caused great fear in the early church community, as it served as a lesson that emphasized the importance of honesty and devotion before God. This story shows how serious the consequences of lying to God can be, and it reminds us of the importance of integrity and transparency in religious life. Let's read Acts 51-11. A man named Anania sold his possession with his wife Sapphira and hid some of the price, and his wife knew. When he took a small amount and put it at the feet of the apostles, Peter said, "Anania, how can Satan be full of your heart, so you deceived the Holy Spirit, hid how much the price of the land? When the land is still, it is not your land, and you can't do whatever you want, even after selling it. How did you put this in your heart? I didn't lie to the person. God." Anania fell down and left her soul after hearing this. And everyone who heard this was very afraid. Young people got up, wrapped the body, carried it, and went out to do business. About 3 hours later, his wife came in without knowing what had happened, and Peter said, "This is the only price of the land sold." And he told me, "Yes, this is the only thing." Peter said, "How can you try to test the Spirit of the Lord together? The feet of those who did business with your husband reached the door, and you, the soul falls down at my feet. So I see young people come in and die, carry them, and do business next to his husband. And the whole church and those who hear this are all very afraid." The early church became one mind, so they shared all things with each other and tried to save them with love. Because of the slogan, "Let's go back to the early church," the saints have fantasies about the early church. But today's story is breaking the illusion of the early church. An unexpected mishap occurred in the first church. Anania and Sapphira were reprimanded by Peter and fell down to death. Our proverb says, "Die in prison." There is a saying. In the text, you see Anania and Sapphira like jade, the first church. When you talk about Anania and Sapphira, you can simply think, "Oh, you shouldn't take away the tithe donation." At the same time, you may complain, "Isn't this too much to even kill you for not making a proper donation?" Please erase these preconceived notions from the beginning. and deal with the text. The Anania and Sapphira story doesn't just deal with the issue of donations. Then let's learn a lesson by looking at why Anania and Sapphira were suddenly killed, and what the result was. Anania sells her possession with his wife, Sapphira. So Anania means, Jehovah's grace is deep, and Sapphira means, beautiful like a jewel. The two had beautiful names, but not their hearts. Anania sold her ownership with her wife. When selling ownership, the couple joined together. The word in addition here means that they conspired. Anania and Sapphira conspired to sell their ownership. Compared to individual crimes, the crimes committed jointly by the two are more unscrupulous. Let's take a look at what happened in section E. How much did you hide from that price? The wife knew. How much did you take and put it in front of the apostles? Anania and Sapphira were people of religious resonance. They wanted to get attention from others. I wanted to be known for making more donations than anyone else, and I wanted to be seen as the most spiritual person. They seemed very envious that Barnabas had devoted all his land and became a respected apostle in the first church. So the couple discussed with each other and sold their possession, hid some, took some, and offered it to the apostles, as if they were offering everything. Their sins were not part of it. There is no problem with giving many and few things before God. No matter how much you give, each of you gives it according to your own mind. The sins of Anania and Sapphira were the sins of hypocrisy, pretending to be loyal, and the sins of falsely doing what was offered to God. Wealth is mine, but ultimately God's. So we must use it well, so that the wealth we have is not sinful, but blessing. We should realize that we are all stewards of wealth, and be able to use wealth well for God's glory. Some Peter said, Anania, how did Satan fill your heart and deceive the Holy Spirit and hide how much the land price was? When Anania offered all of her possessions, Peter pointed out Anania's sin of trying to deceive the Holy Spirit. Anania and Sapphira saw a sitting man rise, and they saw 3,000 people a day repenting and returning, 5,000 people a day. Anania tried to deceive God, even though she should have had awe of God. In this respect, Anania's sins were not ordinary kinds of lies, but special. So how did you get the heart to deceive God? Peter pointed out to Anania, through spiritual insight, that Satan is full of your heart. Anania was ruled by Satan and had a desire to deceive God. Satan is a deceiver. In John 8:44, Jesus pointed to the devil and said, Since the truth is not in it, I cannot stand in the truth and speak it as mine every time I tell a lie, which means that he has become a liar and a father of lies. He said, Satan always seduces people by using sweet tricks. Satan told Eve in the Garden of Eden, On the day you eat it, your eyes brighten and become like God. Genesis 27. Deceived by Satan, Anania first deceived her conscience, second deceived the apostles, and third even tried to deceive God. People can cheat as much as they want, but the Holy Spirit cannot be deceived. So I couldn't deceive Peter, who was full of the Holy Spirit. If Anania and Sapphira had mistakenly made a mistake because their faith was weak or immature, things would have been different. Peter is also the one who made a lot of mistakes due to his vulnerability. That's why he would have understood the mistakes and corrected them as much as he wanted. But they didn't know how to fear God and despised God. So when the land remains the same, it is not your land, and you can't do whatever you want, even after selling it. How did you put this in your heart? I didn't lie to man, but to God. The reason why the saints had property in the first church was never because private property was abolished. The members of the early church temporarily lent material grace and did not implement communism systematically. Peter's scolding emphasized that Anania has the freedom and right to keep her own property as it is, and that she has the right to have it for her own reason, even after selling it. It is even greater sin before God, because he did it falsely, even though he had sufficient freedom and rights to his property. When Anania heard this, she fell down, and her soul left, and everyone who heard this was very afraid. The death of Anania was God's disciplinary action through Peter's scolding. Besides the case of Anania, there are a few examples of God's disciplinary action for matter in the Bible. Anania and Sabbira's sins were similar to Achan's at the time of Joshua. God ordered that if you occupy a soft castle, you will annihilate everything there. But Achan broke God's command and secretly hid the loot from the castle. This led Israel to be defeated during the battle of a castle, and eventually its sins were revealed, and it was destroyed by the stones of its people. Also, when Elisha, who cured Naaman's leprosy, refused the gift of gratitude, his servant Gehazi secretly stole things because he felt sorry for it. And the prophet Balaam was also deceived by wealth and dragged around by King Balak, and even the donkey was reprimanded. If you don't have the right values for wealth like this, wealth becomes a curse, not a blessing.